The forests of Germania, a dark and mysterious place, and inhabited by an even more mysterious people. It was the year 15 AD. The Roman commander Nero Claudius Germanicus, cousin of Emperor Tiberius, was leading a punitive expedition through Germania, the area east of the Rhine River and the Roman Empire's final frontier. Germanicus had been sent here by his uncle Tiberius to settle a score with the Germanic people who inhabited these forests, for they had brought great shame upon the empire. During their journey, Germanicus and his legions passed the remains of the army camp from where the previous Roman governor, Publius Quinctilius Varus, had left on his last journey. The size of the camp corresponded to the size of 3 legions, up to 18,000 soldiers. Further on, the Romans found thousands of bleached bones of the camp's former inhabitants at the place where they were killed. Between the bodies were debris of weapons and horse harnesses. Skulls were nailed to the trees. In open places in the woods, altars were erected by the Germans where they had slaughtered the high officers and the centurions. Some eyewitnesses were still able to tell the tale of what happened here in great detail. The officers were tortured and killed, Varus committed suicide, soldiers were hanged from the trees, and the eagle standards were captured. In a mood of rising anger and grief, the soldiers collected the bones, which were covered with a burial mound during a ritual ceremony. Germanicus honored the fallen and shared in the sorrow of the troops. But he also asked the question, how could the greatest military power of the world have fallen like this? It all started with the previous Roman governor, Publius Quinctilius Varus. Under the reign of Emperor Tiberius' predecessor, Emperor Augustus, Varus was appointed proconsul of Germania in the year 7 AD. When Varus arrived in Germany, the area had already been placed under Roman authority. Many Germanic soldiers served in the auxiliary troops of the Roman army. The civilian population was forced to exchange their morals and customs for Roman citizenship and were encouraged to emerge from the forests to live in one of the newly built cities. It was Augustus' intention to make the Elbe River the empire's border and to build from Germania a new Roman province. This peaceful coexistence came to an abrupt end, however. In almost all sources, it is mentioned that Varus worked far too fervently on Romanizing the Germanic population. High taxes were levied, causing tribes to fall into poverty. The Roman legal system was introduced, triggering a stream of processes with statements and decisions that went against the old-fashioned sense of honor of the primitive Germanic people. Some contemporary writers blame the growing unrest in Germania on the treacherous and barbaric nature of the Germanic people. Even more, however, point towards the lack of tact of Governor Varus. Leaders who did not paint a pretty picture for the empire often suffered from bad press in the Roman historiography, and Varus is an example of this. Justified or not, he was depicted as an inept governor following the Battle of Teutoburg Forest, as the chronicler Velleius Paterculus described him as slow of body and soul, tyrannical, impressionable, and not averse to monetary gain. About the position of governor that Varus previously held in Syria, Velleius wrote, "As a poor man he entered the rich Syria, and as a rich man he left a poor Syria." These growing feelings of unrest were channeled by one man who had earned his spurs in the Roman army, Arminius. Arminius was born in the tribe of the Cherusci around the year 17 BC. He and his brother Flavus took up service in the Roman army and quickly became the first generation of social climbers. Arminius worked his way up as commander of an equestrian unit, acquired Roman civil rights, and was even included in the ranks of the Equitae, the Roman knights. In 7 AD, he returned to Germania, where he belonged to the military staff of Governor Varus. Though apparently a loyal Roman officer, Arminius seemed to be unable to shake off his Germanic roots. It's possible that he may have been touched by the disastrous consequences of Varus' tax policy and the arrogant attitude of the Romans towards the Germans, who spoke of Germans as people who, apart from their voice and limbs, had nothing human about them. Thus, the fires of rebellion were slowly awakened. He secretly made contact with the leaders of the main tribes. Besides his own Cherusci, the Catai, the Procteri, the Caucae, and the non-Germanic tribes of the Marsi and the Sicambri. It was in the year 9 AD that Varus remained in northern Germany with 3 legions and a few auxiliary cohorts, counting some 10,000 to 15,000 men in total. As soon as he was preparing to return to the winter quarters along the Rhine with the rest of his troops, he was informed that the tribe had rebelled in the west. The German conspirators in his staff, including Arminius, left the camp claiming to collect their warriors to help Varus as quickly as possible. The Roman governor let them go in good faith and prepared to move up against the insurgents. Though Varus led his legions away from the usual marching route for unclear reasons, there was no cause for any suspicion. After all, the legions were traveling to the territories of Rome's allies. Despite that, the army had to make their way through forests, hills and marshes in a kilometer-long formation. The pace of the march was delayed by carts with luggage and supplies, as well as the presence of women, children and slaves. With the weather turning, the soldiers were soaked to the bone by the heavy rainfall, causing them to slip in the mud every step of the way. It was in these unbearable conditions that all hell suddenly broke loose. From behind an earthen wall, a rain of arrows and spears descended on the legionaries, followed by rapidly advancing combat units that easily separated the long ribbon of Roman soldiers. The Romans had no opportunity to form up and were hindered by the heavy wet shields and the mud, confusion and slaughter that happened all around them. The scattered clusters of Roman soldiers were easy pickings, and were quickly surrounded by the rapidly moving Germans, who were led by none other than Arminius himself. It was by Arminius' hand that the Germans knew where to find the Romans and where to strike best. Some units managed to build a fortification and spend the night there. Others burnt all their wagons with luggage behind them and managed to get out of the ambush. Even if they managed to escape from the battle, however, many Romans got lost in the woods and were nonetheless caught by the Germans. The killings took several days. When Varus realized the extent of the catastrophe, desperation took hold of him. He threw himself into his sword, along with what remained of his military staff. Whatever troops remained lost all courage and were slaughtered as cattle. The total estimated number of victims vary from 16 to 20,000 men. When Emperor Augustus was presented with the severed head of Varus, he burst out crying, according to reports. Historian Suetonius mentions that Augustus did not shave or cut his hair for months. Augustus was also said to have spoken the historical words, "Vare, legiones rede. Varus, give me back my legions." The disaster of the Battle of Teutoburg Forest persisted for a long time in the collective consciousness of Roman society. A 7-year war broke out, from 9 to 16 AD, with the Roman intent of recapturing the lost Germanic areas. As the forests were revisited under the command of Germanicus Julius Caesar, the Romans re-established their control of the lands east of the Rhine. On the 26th of May 17 AD, Germanicus held a great triumph in Rome, in which Arminius' wife, Tusnelda, was put on display to celebrate this victory. In reality, however, it was little more than a Pyrrhic victory and a prelude to establishing the Rhine River as the permanent border of the Roman Empire, leaving behind any Roman holdings they might have captured beyond its waters. The massacre of Teutoburg Forest ensured that the lands east of the Rhine would never be incorporated into the Roman Empire. It was upon this point that the expansion of the Roman hegemony came to a permanent end, setting the stage for the fatal barbarian invasions that would come to destroy the empire completely almost 4 centuries later. Want to learn more pixelized history? Support the channel by subscribing to it and giving this video a like. Better yet, drop a comment and let me know which subject you would like to see pixelized next. See you next time.